Hey there and welcome to today's Piano TV video where we explore our third and final slur exercise. This is the third of three sets of exercises on how to contrast slur textures with staccato, detach notes, and get really good detail work when you're reading sheet music to make sure you're not just sort of casually approximating the legato lines, but you're getting them precisely right. Part of this is going to be about training your ears, so I encourage you to record yourself playing these exercises as we go. And as with the previous two videos, this one's a little bit harder than the first two, but I still think it's within range of people who have been playing piano for about a year or so, give or take. I mean, you can be the judge of that. But of course, if you're an advanced student, I encourage you to try these out as well. There's never a bad time to keep working on developing this technique, even if you've already been playing for 20 years. So let's get started. All right, it's time to work on our next set of slur staccato patterns. Now, this one's going to seem like we've regressed a little bit. If you have joined for slur exercises 1 and 2, this is a little easier than where we left off, but there's a good reason for that. We're going to be building on this. Just like we started slur exercise 2 very similarly, where we had an excerpt and then we modified it for the second go around. This one we're going to modify a couple times, so you're going to get to know this little pattern quite well. We're also going to be in a different hand position. We're going to be in G position, okay, but it's still a 5-finger position. So this is a good review because we're practicing keeping those staccatos nice and choppy, right hand only, slurring the notes only marked under the slur, which means after this half note you have to lift, making sure that slur doesn't overextend, and then keeping the staccato choppy again, the slur all the way through to the end, and chopping up those staccatos. Let's give it a try. I've got my hand position coordinated, and I'm just going to go really slowly. Pay careful attention to where the staccatos and the legato go. Now, it seems very manageable when we isolate that right hand on its own and we exaggerate the staccato lifting motion. The biggest trap in this piece is the one note that's unmarked, and that's the half note. You notice when we get to the half note, there's no staccato, so the temptation is going to be to keep dragging it all the way to that G staccato. So we get something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it turns into a 4-note slur instead of the 3-note slur as indicated. If we want to be really careful and really particular with how we interpret music, we want to lift, lift, 1, 2, 3, lift, hop. So there is a gap, just a gentle detachment from that half note to that staccato dot. I'm going to do it one more time, just a little faster. Once you get the hang of this, you'll be ready for the second exercise. Okay, so we're going to take the same excerpt that we were just working on. The right hand is exactly the same as where we left it. The only thing we're doing now is we're adding the left hand notes, just these little staccato dots. It's not too difficult, I don't think, in the first two measures. We have to, again, be really cautious that we're carefully observing these empty spaces, and then we continue to observe this lift at the end of the right-hand slur. Where I think it gets a little bit more challenging and why we're practicing this is because you have to practice creating bounce and empty space detached playing in the left hand, while the right hand has to maintain a continuity of slur, this legato playing. Your right hand and left hand are going to want to move in unison, but what this exercise is designed to teach you to do is keep them separate. The right hand's doing a slur technique all the way across the bar line, and the left hand is lifting. Again, we'll start slowly, paying careful attention to getting the hand position coordinated and making sure that we don't lose the integrity of that right hand that we figured out so carefully once we add in those left hand dots. Here we go. So one of the biggest challenges with this is not only does it get more hand coordination-y, but there are two notes that don't line up. What you'll notice is that the first notes they're both staccatos. Whoops, there we go. And then the last hands together notes are also both staccatos. But there's 3 staccatos in the middle that line up with holds in the right hand. So for example, when we do the long slur, while we're doing that, we have 2 dots where we have contrasting hand texture. The left hand lifts, the right hand plays smooth. And that's a tough thing to do. But the other one that I find really challenging is actually the one on measure 2. When we get to the half note, one hand lifts, and that half note holds on a little bit longer, but it still detaches. So getting that technique right is worth recording yourself for lift, just to make sure you're getting that the way it's intended. Now, I'm going to play just a little faster. And again, we're going to build on this exercise, so once you get the hang of this one, we'll move on to number 3. This third exercise is the grand finale of what we've been building towards. So it's the exact same notes. Everything is the same as what you've been doing for the first 2 exercises. The big difference is now we're making it subtle, okay? So instead of all the staccatos dotting every single quarter note, we're just going to lightly detach them. Again, this is going to be not too hard to do when we have repeated notes, because repeated notes lift anyway, but it's going to be a little harder in parts you've already been practicing, like from the half note. Also from this quarter note onto the next slur and keeping that going, while also making sure you keep adequate spacing in the left hand. So again, the idea is we're taking everything you already did, except we're making it more subtle. Instead of really aggressive staccato, we're going to just have it be like a soft kind of relatively lightly spaced set of quarter notes. Let's give it a try. Now, the reason this next one's called subtle detachments is, as we've talked about, we're taking away the staccatos and keeping everything else the same. So now instead of hopping with every note that we hit, we're holding it for just a quarter note duration. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And the subtlety makes it harder to watch for those little slurs that tend to slip in. Lift. So we still got a nice gentle bounce with the quarter notes, and we're still making sure that we're lifting for that half note as well. But again, the effect is going to be softer, a little bit more pleasing to the ears, a little bit more, let's say, relaxing. Now again, the challenge with this, I played it a little fast. The challenge with this is going to be to have your fingers come off at different times. The half note's the hardest one because we're pressing the left hand for a quarter note while the half note's still holding. So we're going 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 1, lift. So notice how the right hand held on longer. It's got the half note duration. 1, lift. But there's the quarter note gap felt in the left hand. So be really careful that when you record yourself doing this and you go really slowly, listen for those details. The last 2 exercises I've got in the set are very similar to each other. So you can kind of strap in is basically going to be, they're different excerpts, but they're both churny. And what we're attempting to do is a more advanced version of what we just did in number 3, where the left and the right hands are doing different techniques. The right hand has some slurs which move on top of detached staccato left hand notes. So we're keeping the left hand nice and extreme for the deep contrast. Deeper contrast in our technique is easier to do than more subtle movements. So it's a really good practice technique. But what is really challenging is that your right hand has to create these 3-note slurs where your left hand is lifting. So you have to figure out how to get the right hand pushing down while the left hand is doing lifting motions. And that's really the big thing. The whole challenge for most people is keeping the slur connected all the way across the 3 notes. A lot of people can get it all the way to 2 notes, but not bridge it quite as far as they need to for that 3rd note. And that's what we're going to do at the keyboard. Okay, so for this fun hand detachment exercise, we're just doing an F major bottom top pattern. So the left hand pattern doesn't change. What's going on is all the variation in the right hand, which isn't too complicated on its own. You'll notice that there's a distinct pattern. We have a lot of repetitive notes. Again, as long as you're listening for the 1, 2, up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you keep popping up after that 3rd note of each phrase, everything is lovely. But put it together, all of a sudden you have contrasting textures. So the left hand, they lift together, but then with the next pop, the left hand comes up, but the right hand stays down. Then they move together. Then they move apart, together, apart. So for some of you, getting this coordination right is really going to be a little bit laborious at first until it starts to feel natural. I'll go slow first. Okay, so you will probably need to go slower than that, especially if you've not done a lot of training with this kind of thing before. And then maybe eventually you work towards something like this. And it's really quite a similar exercise to the one we've got for number 5. I misspoke in number 4 because number 5 is from the same Cherney excerpt. The difference with this one, it's about the same difficulty level, so we're not graduating the difficulty here. But the one thing that I think is challenging is that the slurs aren't as consistent. So this is going to be a little harder for beginners, so beginners can just focus on the previous exercise. But one challenge here is the notes themselves stretch up to an octave. So there's bigger leaps in this one in the left hand. Fortunately, the left hand chord stays just anchored on a C major chord. But the duration of the slurs are different here. We only have 2 of them, but one's for 4 notes and one's for 2 notes. Whereas the last exercise, we had really consistent 3-note slurs. And again, it's going to be the same project. If you're playing detached in your left hand, are you able to keep your slur tied up to itself? Is it fully connected? Or is your right hand lifting in unison with the left hand lifts? Or on the other hand, is your left hand accidentally turning smooth while you're playing the smooth right hand notes? And I'll show you how this is supposed to sound. Let's start by taking a look at that left hand first. It's just hopping on a C chord. And just the only little surprise is finishing on an F at the very end. The right hand, it's got a mix of slurs and dots. So we have a really big octave stretch that in order to play that smoothly, hopefully you've been playing piano. This one maybe is out of reach for some of you who are beginners. But if you're stretching for an octave, try not to hold your hand in a held kind of cramped position. You don't want to hold a claw when you're doing octaves. Keep your hand really in a nice closed shape, that relaxed, casual, open palm shape. Stretch towards it at the last second and then close it up again in order to keep that smooth sound without risking your hand and giving it pain and cramps and stuff like this. So when we're playing it all together, it's the same as the basically the other one we did, where some of our dots are together, but now we have a longer slur line. And this is where we join for the octave up, and we're holding for that quarter note value, lift, we finish on an F. All right, so all together now. Something like that, just very straightforward. And you can maybe, once you get in the flow with something like that. All right, as always, you can download the materials at the Piano TV website. You'll find the link below where you have the MuseScore file and the PDF free for you to download. So I hope you enjoyed this series. Please have fun working on your slur technique, whether it's in these exercises or in the pieces that you're working on. One final thing I'll mention is I have a tutorial on this channel for a preparatory level piece. You could probably approach this one after a few months of playing piano or so. It's called Minuetto by James Hook. This is a easy little piece that is deceptively difficult because it's talking about some of these things that we're doing today. Keeping a detached left hand while some of the notes are slurred in the right hand, making sure the slurs lift in precisely the right spots. So if you're looking for a piece to integrate some of these exercises into and do something a little bit more formal, that would be a really great starting point. So I'll point you in that direction as well. Anyway, hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.